Are you ready to rock and roll?
If you could just get that overactive imagination of yours to work for you instead of against you, maybe you could... What are you doing?
This means something. This is important.
Hello and welcome to another episode on the Sprocket Walker channel. What do you think about aliens and UFOs? I don't know, kind of a weird question, but I thought it'd be fun to talk about it today. I recently came across a sealed copy of The Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay, it's not particularly valuable, but it is a lot of fun to look at. I got this at a thrift store for 50 cents the other day, still in the shrink wrap, and there's just something about opening up a brand new package. I just couldn't resist it. But it is fun to look at this. You can see at one point it was $13.97 from Kmart, and given for inflation, it's probably, I don't know, around 20 bucks today. Value priced. Yeah, that's funny. What's interesting to me now, we think of VHS these days as being pretty junky, and they are. You can find VHS anywhere for, 50 cents, or people are just throwing them away. But it's interesting the cycle that things go through. Something will be really valuable when it's brand new, and then people will lose interest in it and it will drop in value considerably. And then those people who hung on to it for a while, there's like a nostalgia factor to it, and they actually become valuable again. And another example are these video games. At one point you could get those probably for 50 cents or $1 at a thrift store, and now they've really skyrocketed in price. For the collectible value and the memories that are attached to these things. Oh man, I've got some really fond memories playing these old video games. Do you have memories of playing some of these old DOS games, old Windows and DOS games? Let me know in the description down below. Leave a comment, let me know your favorite game you used to play. And if you happen to see some of these at a thrift store for $1 or $2, pick it up, because there's a good chance you got something worth some value. I just love all the feely things that came with these old games. And you can see back in 1992, somebody originally paid $60 for this. But what about aliens? There's been a lot of people that have seen sightings of UFOs and claim to have seen aliens and stuff. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. But I have had some friends that have shared some personal experiences with me that are kind of interesting. Like I said, I'm not quite sure where I stand on this, but I do have an open mind. But I got to share something with you. I recently came across an article on the Prescott News in Arizona about a UFO sighting. And this was actually published in their newspaper. And it's fascinating. You can read about all these crazy things, the sightings that happened. I actually came across this while I was searching for information on the Hopi Indians. And the Hopi Indians actually believe a lot about aliens and as part of their culture and their religion. It's really fascinating. So anyway, I came across this article in the Prescott News, and it's one of the most interesting UFO sightings I've ever heard of. So I'm going to go ahead and play a reading of this article at the end of this video, and then stay tuned because I want to give you my feedback, how I feel about this at the end. So really interesting stuff. Let me know what you think.
(1970) UFO lands in Prescott. Taken from the website prescottazhistory.blogspot.com. Begin article. It all started when a 7th grader named Dick Zabriskie looked up into the night sky and saw an object that, according to him, seemed to stand still within a column of 4 stars, and then it started to move erratically. It changed colors from red to blue, then to green. This incident would be only the beginning. Soon the town would be abuzz over a massive wave of UFO sightings, and the curtain would be raised for the most bizarre event in Prescott history. In 1970, far fewer people believed in UFOs than do today. Back then, people who witnessed such phenomena generally kept it to themselves for fear of ridicule. Yet the show that was put on that August in Prescott was so incredible that it compelled many respected citizens to come forward and allow their accounts to be printed in the newspaper. Mrs. Bill Beringer, who lived near the sawmill, related, "Last night we saw two objects. One we watched for about an hour. The second object remained about 20 to 30 minutes. They looked like big bright stars that moved forward and backward and then in an up and down motion. They seemed a reddish color, dimmed, went to a greenish color and then back to a bright star-like appearance." Reverend John Foster, conservative Baptist minister visiting from Phoenix, said, "I saw a light that moved erratically. Its course changed. It seemed to pulsate and waver at times. It went across the full expanse of the sky but took a course slightly to the right." Agnes Lilj-Guran, a pilot from Glendale, said, "I have seen the objects for more than 3 nights now here in Prescott. I know what planes look like. It was not an airplane. I believe this was a true sighting." Mrs. Irene Wood said, "We were on a hill on Demers Street and at 8:15 p.m. we saw a huge brilliant mass of light looking as big as 3 moons coming very fast from just over Thumb Butte. It seemed almost over Prescott and went to the east. It halted and a huge mass detached itself and fell straight down behind the hills. We came back in the house and at 8:30 we saw another smaller object that was reddish color with a glow. No blinking lights either. It came from exactly the same position and went the same route as the first. But when it got to the place where the first mass had detached its load, it let down 6 small red objects. There was no breakage appearance. Just as the thing hovered, the 6 fell and they were spaced exactly the same distance apart. At one time we saw 4 of these things in the sky at one time. My husband and I were fated or privileged to see what was called the mother craft," Wood said later. "Now I believe in flying saucers. I have more faith in my fellow men than to believe they were all liars who saw these. If you haven't seen one of these objects, don't laugh until you have seen one and then laugh. If you can." Indeed, over a 2-week period many hundreds of flying saucers were seen by hundreds of witnesses. This photograph, taken by Courier photojournalist Chuck Roberts and published in the 8/3 edition, has an arrow pointing to a hairline streak through the sky. The text in the circle reads, "Arrow points to trail of, unknown, and distance covered is approximately 5 minutes. Information on it? Call the Courier." Roberts reported that before this picture was taken the object was moving quite erratically. The strange case of Paul Solim. One man who will always be associated with this event was Paul Solim. The managing editor of the Courier wrote, "Paul Solim is either a hypnotist, magician, has a vivid imagination, or he is telling the truth." About the aliens piloting the spacecraft, Solim said, "There is no reason to fear these people. They are like angels. They come from the planet Venus and they are here to lend credence to prophecy, not to harm anyone. They look just like humans, but of almost a divine quality. They have hair cut neatly to their shoulders and due to their fine qualities and almost musical tone to their voices it is difficult to tell male from female." Solim said the aliens first contacted him in Idaho, called him by name and told him that in a previous life, he had lived with them on Venus. Since then Solim had been directed to several areas where he would speak to people about the prophecy. This, he says, is why he is now in the Prescott area working not only with several Indian tribes, but with others as well. Knowing that most people would dismiss such claims out of hand without the slightest forethought, Solim insisted that he could prove it. He invites anyone interested to meet him at a certain location and watch him call a UFO into sight. A small group of around 17 people showed up and were astonished when a UFO did appear just as Solim had predicted. This happened again and again, with the size of the crowd growing each time and testifying that Solim's predictions came true. Finally, the managing editor of the Courier, Joe Kraus, went to see for himself. Understandably, the paper had been slow to report on the ongoing phenomena, but the story had grown too big to ignore any longer. Numerous people from all walks of life in the Prescott area have been reporting UFO sightings here for the past several nights. In an effort to learn more, Krause agreed to a personal encounter with the saucers with Paul Solem, the man who says he is responsible for their coming. I stood in a backyard in Prescott with several neighbors, the Courier editor wrote, and watched spellbound for almost half an hour Friday. It looked like a star. Almost. It rose in the sky, stopped, hovered, wavered to one side and then continued across the sky repeating the maneuvers. It was a long way away, but we thought it changed colors from a white to a reddish orange and then to a purplish blue and then a reddish white. And then it was gone. A flying saucer? Yes, if we could believe our eyes. But there is more. Paul Solem, the man who says he is responsible for the saucers which have visited here for the past 3 nights. And according to him, the sightings will continue until the message of why they came is given. He stood off by himself, alone Friday, gazing into the sky while the rest of us watched only a few feet away. He was calling mentally, he said. And then after about 15 minutes he yelled, "They are here. I can't see them yet, but I know they are here." One just said, "We're here, Paul. There are several people in the saucer. I can hear them talking." After a couple of minutes, a star appeared in the sky that wasn't there before. As the saucer hovered overhead, Solem repeated to us the words he said he heard through mental telepathy from the spacecraft. "My name is Paul, the second, fourth in command of all ships that enter the atmosphere of the planet called Earth. We come to lend credence and as a sign or token that the Hopi prophecy was of a divine nature. Great sorrow and fear will be coming to this planet very soon and few will escape it. Our leader as spoken of in Hopi prophecy is already here, on Earth, in mortality and is known as the Apostle John, the same one as in the New Testament. The white brother shall be introduced by a huge fire and the earth shall quake at his arrival. We are of the 10 lost tribes and we will return several nights unless there is contempt for us." The message ended and the UFO disappeared. Solem had a way of attracting the saucers to himself. Trailed constantly by skeptical reporters, Solem seemed to have the knack of making UFOs appear at his bidding. On the night of August 9th, for example, about 100 persons watched Solem contact the saucers, which obligingly appeared shortly afterwards. Then it happened. The same night Joe Krause met Paul Solem to witness his prediction come true. Krause also sent a photographer named Vel to the airport to take any interesting pictures he could see. He took the following photos which were published on the front page August 9th. The caption reads, "Prescott Courier staff member and photographer Vel along with Mr. and Mrs. Bilme all of Prescott were waiting at Highland Pine Lookout at the time Paul Solem made his saucer contact Friday. They saw quite a different view of the saucers which Vel described as zigzagging, making formations and landing in an area between Prescott and the airport. The glow, Vel said, was caused by the objects seemingly landing in that area. The small lights below the outline of the mountains are homes. Prescott is out of camera range to the right of both photographs. Taken with time exposure, the long zigzag lines are the unidentified objects in the sky. About 6 objects remained in the area for about a half hour. The time was about 10:30 p.m. Enter the Hopi. The Hopi do indeed believe that what we call UFOs will play a part in the end times. When news of this massive sighting reached the Hopis, their chief, Dan Katchongua along with a delegation of 2, went to Prescott to learn more about the rash of UFO sightings here which they believe is in direct line with Hopi prophecy. On August 14th the 3 Hopis went with Solem to Yavapai Stone at 741 6th Street to witness the UFOs for themselves. As usual, all other interested parties were invited to attend. According to Dan Carlson, who was there with about 50 others, the UFO did indeed show up at 9:20 p.m. For 20 minutes we watched it cut an erratic path across the sky, as it traveled slowly in a southwesterly direction. If one is to believe Hopi prophecy, Carlson said, the reasons the saucers are sighted here most often and contactors seem to be attracted here is that this is a chosen land. Prescott is within the Hopi circle of sacred ground, where these beings from another world are supposed to bring about prophecy. On August 14th, Solemn stated that the big show is over, but the sightings would still occur for some time to come. He was right again. The following March, Prescott's own flying saucer prophet returned with Chief Dan and predicted that a saucer would appear east of Drake. Press releases were sent out and the Hopi along with several hundred people went to be witness. Solemn stated that the 50-foot white ship, commanded by Paul II, would be from Venus. It would be seen close up during daylight hours. Solemn said he expected it would bring more messages about the Hopi prophecies. The UFO will hover above the ground at about 100 feet, turn at various angles so that it can be seen and photographed and then depart, Solemn said. It will remain for about 5 minutes. In addition, the mothership will also be seen hovering overhead, but much higher in the sky. Although hundreds of people journeyed to Drake to witness the phenomena, the promised saucer appearance failed to materialize. Solemn explained later that the reason for the no-show was that just prior to the meeting bulldozers appeared in the area destroying the ground where the saucer was to appear. The aftermath. When the city's adventure was over, Courier editor Krause tried to take stock. He admitted that some of the sightings were probably satellites. Yet, there are far too many other sightings, however, to conclude that the entire sightings were hoaxes. The changing colors, the zigzags, the contacts which Paul Solemn claimed he made and observed by several hundred witnesses including Courier staff members did not seem to us to appear as a satellite or a plastic balloon, he wrote. With the little facts we have on hand, most of us here are keeping an open mind on the subject, hoping that someday we may know for sure. Solemn left Prescott to move farther north, nearer to the Hopi Nation. In the 1980s he moved back to Blackfoot, Idaho, where he died at age 91 on February 11, 2012. Hopi chief Dan Katchongua's passing was far more mysterious. He was last seen walking up a small valley where a UFO had just been seen. Then the 107-year-old slipped into the strange case file of human vanishings. His body was never found. This ends the article. 1970 UFO lands in Prescott.
Okay, what'd you think? Wasn't that fascinating? There's just something kind of fun and cool about the fringe stuff that's out there. The stuff that's like right on the border between fact and fiction, that has just enough observable, provable things to make it interesting, but kind of an element of the unknown that we can't reproduce or scientifically prove. Things like Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, stuff like that. Just really fun, interesting stuff to me. One of the things that was kind of weird to me about this article is there was really no point to observing the UFOs. Like, nothing ever came of it. Just one guy really who sort of brought the aliens or brought the UFO sightings. There's kind of a light show involved and not much else other than just kind of interesting. So what's my feeling on this? Well, I think the editor of this Courier newspaper article said it best. He said, "With the little facts we have on hand, most of us here are keeping an open mind on the subject, hoping that someday we will know for sure." And I think that's how I feel. I've got an open mind. I'm not convinced one way or the other, but there's some interesting, strange things that go on in this world, and a lot of people who swear they've seen things. So, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, fun, and there's certainly nothing like a good story, right? And with that, thanks for watching the Sprocket Walker channel. I hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Mashed potatoes? My favorite. Terry, you shouldn't have.
George.